Good Vibrations.
All right, so today's guest is a guy that I spoke to almost exactly a year ago, actually, on the jolly subject of geoengineering. A lot of water has passed under the bridge since then, and a lot of crap has been dumped in the skies. So we're back for more today as we talk about, unfortunately, another clear and imminent threat to human health and well-being. But we are going to try and end this broadcast on a positive note and offer some kind of encouragement and upliftment to listeners. So I do urge you all to stick around till the end and don't attach that hosepipe to your exhaust in the garage just yet. So it's welcome back to Good Vibrations to Matt Landman.
Hey, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Great to have you back, mate. And lots of things to talk about today. We should probably start at, well, we met briefly last year at the Truth Mind Reality conference in Phoenix. Big shout out to Ivan for putting that on. That was a great event. It was a one-day thing. You were in attendance there yourself, and you got to do a talk. So, yeah, that was a worthwhile event, I felt.
Yeah, it was great to meet you in person, and well done on your new book and on your presentation as well. How'd you like Phoenix?
It was interesting. I didn't see too much of Phoenix itself because the conference was in Glendale, but Ivan took me to a vinyl record store and a pizza restaurant. So those are my only impressions of Phoenix, really.
Very nice.
Anyway, so yeah, we were present at that event, and this was in March, and imminent at that time was this very key event in May, which actually took place on my birthday, involving this mentally ill individual named David Keith and a few others. Maybe we should start with you filling us in on why that event was so significant and what went down there, because I think you relocated yourself to Arizona specifically for that event, right?
Yes, I was actually living in Canada, so I moved down to the southwest United States in order to host the third annual Global Summit to Stop Geoengineering. The implications of this particular location and conference were pretty large. So the conference was hosted in Tucson, Arizona, and this was the location of a proposed experiment to essentially normalize and legitimize geoengineering, aka chemtrails, as a proposed solution to climate change or global warming. So David Keith, he's the primary person pushing the solar geoengineering agenda. He has his bankroll from Bill Gates, as we discussed 1 year ago, which was funny because right when I mentioned his name, our Skype got cut off, owned by Microsoft.
Yeah, I remember that.
But,
yeah.
So, whatever that was. But so we've got Bill Gates and other powers funding David W. Keith out of Harvard. He's a professor there. So he's bankrolled to be basically the spokesperson for the legitimizing of solar geoengineering. Now, anybody who has woken up to the subject or is on the cusp of waking up, they've noticed the grid patterns in their sky or the rippled frequency impacted clouds in their skies for a few decades now. Depends on when you woke up, but as you look back at older photos and get into these truth communities online and what have you, or even watch my film Frankenskies, frankenskiesthemovie.com, Frankenskies on YouTube and Vimeo. Please check it out, this documentary film. You learn this has been ongoing. And essentially, it seems that David Keith and the people behind him, they first of all wanted to sidestep decades of treason, okay, by normalizing the spraying. But also it seems like they want to spray more and have government funding for it. So an experiment was unfolding called SCOP-X, which is the controlled perturbation stratospheric experiment where David Keith was taking a balloon into the stratosphere through the help of a company by the name of Worldview Enterprises out of Tucson, Arizona. Now, Worldview Enterprises, if you do some research on them, they have some interesting technology of very high-tech balloons that are actually tethered together in the stratosphere that can release payloads for months at a time. So these balloons that spray aerosolized chemicals, not unlike the planes that we witness spraying these aerosolized chemicals, but in order to normalize and condition and program the entire world, they are first starting with this balloon concept. So the concept is that this experiment involves a balloon that's released into the stratosphere, and different chemicals are sprayed in front of the sun. They claim they want to use calcite. They claim they're going to try sulfur. And they also claim they will be using various sizes of nanoparticulate aluminum oxide. Well, to the researchers that have done their due diligence and tested rainwater after heavy, persistent linear cirrus cloud formation sprays out of the back of jets, we found aluminum oxide in our rain and in our plants, and it seems to be coming from the planes. Okay, so aluminum oxide has been what's been sprayed. All right, but now they're trying to normalize it and say that they have the solution and that they're experimenting on which chemicals will work best to dim the sun to save us from climate change. So that's why I chose Tucson, and that's why I moved down to Arizona and got to meet you, yes, in March at the Truth Mind Reality Conference in Phoenix, where I spoke and encouraged people to come to the conference I was hosting, and we had a great turnout. It was great. There's people from all over the world. I had luckily gone on this radio show leading right up to it called Coast to Coast AM, where it's about 2 million live listeners. Right. So a lot of people tuned in. A lot of people came from all over because their interest was piqued to the concept of this. It's a historical moment. It's a spot on our timeline where the legitimizing of spraying the skies is now occurring. I always thought when I was becoming an activist and when I was making the film Frankenskies, I always thought that my entire life would be convincing people that there's actually spraying going on. I never thought that there would be a normalizing, legitimizing campaign through this social engineering and the controlled media and corrupted science to tell the world that this is actually something that we want. So in Tucson, I hosted this conference and had a concert at the end. I had a protest the next day. We had speakers. The top researchers and scientists in the field came and spoke about geoengineering and how it's been ongoing and the potential harmful side effects to the planet and humanity. And it was an interesting event. The university would not let me stream my event, even though I had paid for live streaming and I had a video company there to stream the event. They wouldn't give us access. That was an interesting hiccup, but once I learned that the university also had a master's in geoengineering program, I saw what was going on. Also, right after I gave my speech, there was a provocateur who came and interrupted the conference screaming, and the police were called, and it was quite the ordeal. But now that is in the past. That is in the past, and we showed the world that day that we know what is unfolding and what is actually going on. I do believe that the experiment was paused, potentially because of the outreach and the waves that we made in Tucson on that day. But now the media is coming out and saying that this spring the experiment will actually unfold and happen. So the normalizing, legitimizing of solar geoengineering, or chemtrails as we know it, is taking place right before our eyes.
Well, blocking out the light and the life-giving properties of our God-given sun, what could possibly go wrong? And if this had been announced decades ago, I mean, say back in the 1980s or something, if some government official had announced that, oh yeah, one day we're going to block out the light of the sun to save you all from this imaginary thing called global warming, you would like to think the public would have been apoplectic about it and would have risen up in their droves and said, the hell you will. We're not having that. Not on our watch. And yet now it's been announced, it is happening, and it seems they're not.
Well, I would imagine a couple of decades ago, people would have spoken up a lot more than they do now. I've done a lot of research recently on social engineering. Noam Chomsky and manufacturing consent, Edward Bernays and his influence.
Right.
And the populace has been so well engineered that basically it's a Pavlovian thing now. It's like they ring a bell, we salivate. They know exactly how we think, the majority, the masses, how they think, how they react, and what kind of news they need to plug into their smart device to get them thinking the way they want them to think.
Right. Yeah, good points. And the public has been getting confusing messages over geoengineering for years, where it seems in one breath they'll deny that it's happening at all, and they'll just put it all down to water vapor and ice crystals and so-called contrails. And then in another breath, they'll say, oh yeah, we're doing it in experimental stages to see what would happen if we did this. So nobody's really known what to think about it, or whether there's any truth to it, or whether it's all a conspiracy theory. But it seems like the game is on now. They're coming right out and admitting that this thing is real, confirming the suspicions of many researchers from over the years. And it seems we've turned a corner now.
Well, it's this hidden, right in plain sight mentality where if you try to wrap your head around it and think for yourself, it's actually quite difficult. If you look at the articles that have been surfacing over the past years encouraging the research and deployment of geoengineering to save us from climate change, the photos used are chemtrail skies. And they are saying this is the proposed solution that we may do one day. So you look at your sky currently and you see it ongoing, and then you see this image in Forbes magazine or whatever you want to look up, whatever publication, they're almost all completely controlled. And they show you that exact photo, but posing it as a future solution. Well, anybody who starts to think and try to argue it, they'll just lean back into complacency and say, oh, well, they told us that they're doing it and now they're doing it. It's actually a good thing. It's this problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic that I'm sure a lot of us are all very used to now. So it's like this. There's wildfires in Northern California or extreme weather conditions, even extreme cold. And they'll say, oh, that's global warming. That's climate change. We need a solution. And the spin to the solution inevitably walks you down this hallway where the very dead end of it is geoengineering. And it's being posed as such a wonderful thing to prevent us from being under water or being in a forest fire or what have you, that people have been fear-mongered into believing that this is our only option.
And it's provable that chemtrails have been painted in to old movies, old TV shows, old music videos. They're now appearing on cereal boxes aimed at kids. So you go and buy a box of, I think it's Weetabix here in the UK, and you've got a chemtrailed sky. You go on an estate agent's website to look at a property, and there's frigging chemtrails all over the sky. And they've been stripping them in to this old footage. So it's happening in music videos. Somebody directed me to a video by Simple Minds, for example, from the mid-'80s. Now, this shit wasn't going on then, but you watch that video and somebody has painstakingly sat there and painted them in to the skies. So if everything is above board and those parties behind this are being transparent about it and it can all be justified scientifically, why would there be any need to go to this kind of skullduggery and paint them into old videos and old films and stuff? The very fact that this is being done shows you that there's nefarious elements to it.
Exactly. There's really no there's no limits to the degree of the social engineering that they have gone to through, yes, video games, through print publications, through advertisements, through old movies. I just was on a plane and watched 28 Days Later, zombie movie. I was on the edge of my seat. And the way that mind control really works is they put your brain in a certain place, and then they gently tell you something they want you to believe. Well, 28 days later, the whole time, you're rooting for the protagonist. You really want these people to survive and not get eaten by zombies. And finally, at the very end of the movie, they look up in the sky and they see a chemtrail. and they say, oh, thank God, there's more people on Earth. We will be saved. We will be safe. But think about how deep and psychological that is, the extent to which they go to make you think that these things are normal, okay, good, and actually a solution to our problems.
It's unbelievable, man. And what's dumbfounding to me is what certain people will do for a paycheck. So, some guy sat there and painted in those chemtrails in that Simple Minds video and in all these movies and stuff. That provocateur that you mentioned at the conference that turned up and tried to derail things, obviously he's getting paid for that. So he's okay with that. He's okay with drawing a paycheck for going and disrupting an event which is intended to empower humanity against threats to its health and well-being. That people will actually do this just dumbfounds me to the point of incomprehension at the degraded state of human consciousness. I shouldn't really be surprised by this anymore with the level of research I've done into it, but I still get dumbfounded and amazed, and my jaw hits the floor just looking at what some people would do for a paycheck.
It is sad. It is. But at this point in our timeline where so much truth has been hidden, people think that they're doing a good thing at times. Not everyone. A lot of people know what's going on. But when you've been compartmentalized and conditioned to such a degree, you actually believe that you are doing something for the good. When you're told that climate change is unstoppable and your friends and family will be impacted, but if we dim the skies with chemicals, maybe the bees will die, maybe everyone will get Alzheimer's, but the planet will be saved. There's so many degrees and levels of mind control. I know you've written books on the MK Ultra and all this. The level of mind control throughout society, from the very gritty, very real MK Ultra satanic ritual abuse, division of personalities, to the normal person walking down the street just being influenced by the Starbucks logo and these things that they are completely unaware of. Everyone is controlled to a degree that I like to give them a little benefit of the doubt. And then also these dark forces, as they come into our world, when we are able to recognize them and shine that light for others to see, it shows us our true purpose and gives everyone hope. It's part of this duality that we live in, and I try not to. I know it's ridiculous, and I can't really see eye to eye with these people and see where they're coming from, but I try hard.
Sure, yeah, I see that. You make some good points, and I guess people like me and many of those that will be listening to this show are viewpoint on things is skewed by the fact that we surround ourselves with this sort of information every day. And it's easy to forget that we weren't always at this level of awareness, and that at some point all of us were just like the vast majority of society, believing all the lies, believing all the mind control, believing that the government is out for our best interests. So, yeah, we just need a little reminder every now and again, I guess, that most people are still stuck in that, and they need to come to this truthful information in their own time and space. And that's why we do shows like this, to try and help to bring them there. But yeah, our view on things can be skewed by what we surround ourselves with every day. Just a little disclaimer there, I guess. We should probably discuss how the geoengineering agenda then is linked to 5G, because it's 2019 now, and this is going to be a very crucial year in terms of that particular agenda being rolled out, and 2020 even more so. What kind of links and connections are there between these two? Because I would guess that these subjects are intrinsically linked, right?
Well, that they surely are. And well, on the surface level, on the whole aspect of people coming into the light and realizing the truth and waking up, chemtrails, yeah, that's kind of hard. They're up in the sky, and you point to them and show people that that's not how it's supposed to be, and that there's high bypass turbofan jet engines that cool the air, and there's no hot air coming out of the back of engines. There should be no contrail. The contrail is a that's a different chemical being released. The persistent linear cirrus cloud formations, those are chemicals. It's a little confusing, and there's science behind it, and it's tough. But when there's a cell tower out front of your home, and it's making you have headaches and you can't sleep, and your neighbor has a tumor in their brain, okay, you see where I'm going? It's an amazing opportunity to not just have to point at the sky anymore. As the bringers of the truth, we're bringing forward this dawn on the horizon where people can finally wake up and we can band together and make a new world for ourselves. Pointing to a tower that is right there, it's going to be a lot easier. But in other terms, that's more of a philosophical, but still I think it's really important because it's kind of an opportunity. In other terms, the 5G terahertz 1 millimeter wave, once they can fully put together their infrastructure, this will be able to activate the aerosolized nanoparticulates and the aluminum oxide and what have you. When they spray these oxidized metals, they slowly float to the ground. Okay, and you can zap them with ground-based ionospheric heater HARP stations utilizing Tesla technology, but still, even after that, the particles float to the ground. Okay, so what they can do now with this 5G tech, to my understanding, is suspend these nanobots, these metal particulates, even the biochemical warfare experiments that are ongoing. These things where they have a very, very small impact on the ground level, people on the ground level. They'll spray some SARS or whatever they end up wanting to research, and a small percentage of the people will end up with their avian flu or what have you. Well, if they can learn how to suspend in air the chemicals and stuff that they spray, it's a whole new ball game for them. So that's one thing. Okay. Also, it's all basically this control grid. To be able to control the frequency in the air, they can control us. We are beings of frequency. Our hearts, our minds, our bodies, even the Schumann's resonance of the earth that we can tune into, which I believe is 7.4 something hertz. These are all things that we need to get grounded, to be able to think clearly, to have this biometric frequency that we all live by. Through this control grid, the frequencies can be completely manipulated, and the chemtrails along with that, once these nanometals are inside of us, it'll be even more easily available for them to manipulate the frequencies in our bodies. So I'll just dive into the 5G for just a minute. So to stress the impact of our biology, of our physiology, we are literal beings of light. Okay, we're tangible. We think we have like this mass and what have you, but we are beings of frequency. Okay, and our bodies are set up to recognize the frequency of the sun, the frequency of the moon, the frequency around us, and we get into this rhythm. It's called the circadian rhythm. And as we go through our day, our pineal gland and the different glands in our brain and even our endocrine system, our body knows what time of day that it is. Even if it's cloudy, even if it's geoengineered chemtrail skies, we have this internal clock, okay? And when the sun goes down, our body goes into this different phase. And when we lay down and go to sleep and it's dark out, our brains release precursors to dopamine and melatonin and serotonin, and there's all these chemical reactions all throughout the day that occur. Now, the 5G millimeter terahertz wave, all right, this wave to our brains, it's essentially recognized as light. Okay, so the properties of light, the size of the light wave, and how fast it goes, this 5G technology is actually encroaching, mimicking the light as far as our pineal gland and what have you interpret it. So our bodies are recognizing this artificial frequency and thinking that it's high noon, that it's noon whenever we're around these frequencies. So there was a National Institute of Health research study, and they were very curious about why there was a statistical anomaly with utility workers. These utility workers were working on cell towers, and they sampled 500 random utility workers, and 10% committed suicide. Okay, so they were wondering why such drastic levels of depression, and why does it seem to be so correlated with utility workers? Well, come to find out, these utility workers, they were working on these towers, and their entire systems were being disrupted because they were being exposed to so much of this non-ionizing radiation, which was disrupting their endocrine system, their glands in their brain, and they weren't producing enough dopamine, serotonin, and they were so depressed that they were killing themselves. 10%. That's beyond statistical significance. Statistical significance would come at a much lower percentage. So it's easily extrapolated that it's causation and not just correlation. There's so many different studies. So if you start to do the research, you can see the links, but especially the impacts on just our bodies, and quickly too. It's not this over 5 years you end up with a brain tumor kind of thing. People are realizing the impacts almost immediately in the cities in the United States where the 5G has been released. People are contacting me with nosebleeds, they can't sleep. Just the proximity to these towers, they're putting up these small cell towers every 3 homes. So the likelihood that you have a tower out front of your house is actually very high. I've got a gentleman out of Sacramento, California. He contacted me. Within 300 feet of his home, he has 3 towers. And his property value has been hurt. He can't move. He doesn't know what to do. And for that reason, because I'm proactive and I want to be hopeful and helpful, I'm actually launching an EMF, RF, radiation, microwave radiation protective clothing line. I've just started going with this, and I really have a great feeling that this will be a very nice opportunity for the future generations, especially if you look into the potential for the depopulation agenda, how much this terahertz wave impacts fetuses and the ability for the next generation to procreate. It's basically like this. If you are born into this environment, meaning you were a fetus and you were exposed to 5G, you were born, you're exposed to 5G, and you grow up exposed to 5G, once you get to be the age of procreating, you won't be able to. The eggs and the sperm will be so decimated that, and then we can get into that later on in the show, how that even actually pushes towards this transhumanism agenda. But yeah, so I don't know if okay. So either way, the clothing line. So what I've learned is some countries, such as China, they require protective aprons during maternity. Okay, because they know of the dangers of the smartphones and the smart meters and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff during pregnancy. But in countries like the United States, where the lobbyists have their pockets filled by the telecom industry has more money than big pharma. Just wrap your head around that. There's a lot of money here in telecom through AT&T, Verizon. You know, I know you guys have across the pond different companies, TELUS and what have you, but all these telecom companies are in bed with the regulators.
Sure.
And the regulators are saying, well, if it's not ionizing radiation, we don't care. So they have this one experiment of a dummy with salt water in his head. And they put a cell phone up to the dummy and they say, look, the salt water in his head is not heating up enough to cause enough damage. Well, that's ionizing radiation. Okay, ionizing radiation heats. Just because it doesn't heat doesn't mean it's not causing cellular damage or disrupting your entire system.
Right.
So what I've learned is you can line your clothing with different metals. It's literally back to the tinfoil hat, Mark. I swear, it's wild. So you can line your clothing or your hats or your underwear or your bra or your baby blanket, for instance, which is something that I want to be coming out with this year, is the baby blanket for sure. You can line your clothes with copper, with silver, with stainless steel, even nickel. Okay, and what happens is this 1 millimeter size wave, it bounces off the metal, and it literally acts as like an armor shielding. So the 1 millimeter size wave, it's basically the thickness of a penny. A penny is 1.5 millimeters, and this size wave is really what the big problem is. We haven't interacted with waves of this size yet in our lifetimes. Imagine children growing up in an environment that we have never even been exposed to. The waves that we are surrounded with nowadays are much larger. Okay, some of them even the size of a football field. They go right through us. They don't impact our bodies. They definitely don't get absorbed into our skin. And it's not impactful to the degree that it causes any substantial harm or anything like that. Even the older cell phone technology is nothing like this 5G. So once we start to understand it and start to realize the potential impacts, a risk mitigation strategy is necessary, and that's why I'm launching this clothing line. I've even just put up my GoFundMe, gofundme.com/protection clothing, and I have a brand name that I need to get trademarked. I'll be launching the website this year. This year is going to be a really big year for me and for the world and for activism, because once this clothing line is up, I'll be rolling all proceeds right back into activism, hosting future conferences on 5G. I'm actually making a movie. It's called Altered. It's about frequency. It starts off. I'm kind of rambling now, and I'll shut up in just a second. My film is about frequency and the history of frequency. What's so staggering about this, and the way that the masses are controlled, is if we don't see it, if we can't hear it, touch it, smell it, or see it, we really don't care. We'll look it up on our smartphone. And if it says it's okay, we'll just go on with our lives, okay? So frequency is something that people really need to wrap their heads around. So I'm going back into the past, and I'm researching Nikola Tesla, Royal Raymond Rife. What Royal Raymond Rife discovered was that just like an opera singer, how an opera singer can find this certain pitch and then shatter the wine glass, well, Rife technology could find the certain pitch of anything, cancer cells, virus cells, and he created this Rife machine that could actually destroy illnesses, ailments, by using frequency vibration technology, by finding the frequency that would literally destroy different viruses or cancer cells. So the discoveries in the early 1900s about frequency that were shunned by the FDA and pushed aside, just like Tesla's free energy and what have you, I'm going to be exposing, bringing that to the surface, and then walking us through to modern day to how we got to where we're at and what the concerns are and how it can actually lead to a very dystopian future in a very short amount of time if we don't wrap our heads around the technology that we're immersing ourselves in.
Right. Yeah, Tesla made a comment to the effect that if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration. So, yeah, he understood all this. That sounds like a very fascinating project you've got on the way. And it was Julian Huxley of that notorious Huxley family who introduced the idea of the tinfoil hat in one of his short stories decades ago, probably close to 100 years ago now. So what did he know, I wonder, way back then with that whole idea? You're absolutely right about the way in which the 5G agenda is to a very large extent being shuffled in under the radar because we can't see this stuff. You can't see the frequencies. If it appeared in the form of something like a pink mist, so every time you pass a transmitter, you see all this pink mist coming out of it, and you realise it's actually everywhere. It's going through your body tissue. It's going through your clothing. That would certainly wake people up far more than the situation we have where it's all unseen, and so you don't think about it. You're absolutely right about that. How would you say public awareness of 5G issues is in the United States generally? I mean, do people generally only come to it when they succumb to some sort of illness as a result, or are there quite a number of people talking about this now, would you say?
Well, that's a great question. And I surround myself with people who are aware and in tune and waking up to things.
Right.
So I try to get the pulse on the street and what have you, because I'm out there passing out geoengineering flyers almost every single day, because I've decided that's my life mission. Although this 5G and frequency and what have you, I think my life mission is dual purposed at this juncture. But I've witnessed a lot of people are waking up and coming to terms with it because it's a cell tower on their street. Okay, it's kind of a selfish thing. It's not like people really care about humanity and what have you, but that's kind of how things start. You know, they start off as a personal journey.
That's what it takes. It has to affect people personally in a very direct way for them to take action, whatever it takes. Exactly. You talk to people that are holistic healthcare providers or have gone through something. A lot of people deal with their own sickness first, and then they're researching, and then they realize, wait a second, was I injured from a vaccine? And, you know, it all comes unraveling once they learn about their options and, you know, what do you mean chemo actually is harmful and all this sort of stuff. So there's a website I encourage listeners to take a glance at called mystreetmychoice.com. And this is a group of activists that basically are saying, look, you can do something about this. You are not helpless. And I really want to push this notion. We are not helpless. All right? This mentality that someone else will do it for you, this mentality that all is lost, it's hard, I know. Waking up is not easy. All right. And there's a lot of fear that comes with it. But ultimately, you need to step out of this victimhood mentality and rise to truth, which truth is a very high vibration. And once you do, you know how unlimited your abilities are and how much you can actually do and how much impact you can actually make. Even just having one eye-to-eye conversation with a passerby about a certain topic, you can literally change the world. You just have to believe in your voice. You have to believe in your truth and speak your truth. So to answer your question, there's a lot of activists speaking up. There's people in Congress, they're speaking up. It's hard to know because as I look into controlled opposition and civil society actors, which I had to learn about all this kind of the hard way, researching geoengineering, the entities that are behind the scenes pulling these strings, if they're going to spend billions of dollars rolling out 5G infrastructure, you better believe they're going to spend some money on controlled opposition as well. So the congressmen that are speaking up against 5G, you know, are they controlled? I don't know. And I don't really want to get wrapped up in that negative, you know, everyone's out to get us kind of thing. But there are people in Congress. There's people in Congress speaking up, you know. Do I trust them necessarily? I don't know. Do I trust the activists that are speaking up? Yes, I have to. So there's activists in Northern California that are speaking their word. They're actually providing a template for zoning restrictions where you can't have this many towers close to each other or towers close to schools and preschools and what have you. So a lot of researchers, a lot of doctors are stepping up, and the energy is coming to the forefront. The wave of knowledge on 5G harmful impacts, it is coming faster than I've ever seen anything come up. I mean, you talk about, actually GMOs came with a pretty fierce wave, and now organic is labeled in the grocery store. That's amazing. How that could apply to 5G. Maybe there'll be safe zones where people can huddle up that are in the know and wear my protective clothing when they leave that safe zone. But yes, people they're waking up to it. I see a lot of feedback, a lot of people. I've even had people, Mark, you wouldn't believe it. Someone approached me at the farmer's market the other day, and they said, "Are you Matt Landman?" And I go, "Oh, you know me from Geoengineering. Did you see my film Frankenskies?"
And he goes, no, what's that? And I go, chemtrails. He goes, what are chemtrails? And I go, well, how'd you know about me? Is it Facebook? You follow me on Facebook? He's like, no. He's like, I saw something you did on 5G. And he says that a lot of people are talking about it, where he lives in Seattle, and something needs to be done, and where's the regulatory body on this? The thing is the EPA, which is in the states, the Environmental Protection Agency. Well, as we know, most of these agencies have been completely bought, but there was a point when we could trust them. And the EPA, after the realization that low levels of ionizing radiation from Chernobyl were actually having impacts on people's health, around 1990, studies were done on ionizing radiation, electromagnetic fields, RF radiation, and the EPA came out and stated the levels that were harmful. Well, immediately, their ability to regulate that was taken from them, and it was passed on to the FCC, the Federal Communications. It's whoever regulates
all these goddamn alphabet agencies.
Right, the FCC. Either way. So communications, something or other. So now the people who are having these meetings with telecom, they're the ones in charge, okay? And people are realizing it. People are realizing it from the breast cancer they're getting right where their cell phones were. And as these towers roll out and they're right in front of their faces, I mean, the state of New Mexico came together and banned smart meters, all right? Enough wave of information and activism came together in that state that smart meters were banned. In the state of California, you can opt out and get an analog smart meter. The smart meter awareness, I don't think it has come to this point where it needs to be, and I do believe that smart meters were a form of priming people for the next wave of electromagnetic frequency RF radiation, which is 5G.
Right.
But I do believe people are waking up to 5G, and I'm really happy about it. Honestly, I see a lot of people speaking up. I see scientists stepping up. I see small groups popping up all over the country. Will it be enough? I don't know, but I do have hope in at least this zoning requirement where it can't be there can't be a certain amount of towers on your street. So what the rules are now is telecom cannot be influenced by human health, believe it or not. So the law states that a tower going up, it cannot be prevented based on human health. So if someone has electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or someone has a
pacemaker.
Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't do that. So if you have a pacemaker, you shouldn't be around certain EMF fields, or your pacemaker can get messed up. You can die.
I wonder if the ruling would be different if it were the sister or the mother of the CEO of one of these companies involved.
Well, no kidding. And that's why I'm seeing in Silicon Valley, where a lot of rules are being put up, there's even towns that have banned 5G from rolling out, but those towns are multi-million-dollar mansions, so it's like, whose town is really getting 5G banned? So the law now states that health implications can't dictate cell towers, but property values can. So if you put up a cell tower and everybody starts moving because they're getting sick and property values drop, it's kind of a catch-22. So I think something will come of this. It's just like anything. Our voice matters more now than ever, and as we bring this truth forward to the right people, I spoke up after the conference in May. I went and spoke at a meeting. We had a city council meeting in the small town that I was living in Sedona, Arizona. Sedona, Arizona has one cell tower in the middle of town. The proposal was to put up 28 new towers along with hundreds and hundreds of small cell repeater stations all throughout this very small town. I went and spoke. They kept pushing off the ability to comment. They pushed it off so much that finally I was the only one speaking. But I spoke. And I said to the city that there needs to be some sort of health mitigation committee that talks about these risks, that something needs to be done. And I threw that video up on YouTube, and it went around. A lot of people were encouraged. But just planting that seed is my point, okay? I spoke for a few minutes, and now the seed has been planted. And now people that weren't even looking at those towers are now saying, wait a second, is there a problem there? What I think the biggest thing that people can do is buy a meter. You get this RF EMF fields meter. I got one from Germany for a couple $100, and then I got a much better one for like 450. But you can get one for even €100. Okay, you end up, or are you on the pound over there? Either way.
Yeah.
So you can get one of these meters, and it will change your life. Okay, your Wi-Fi router, it emits a microwave signal. If you're sitting right next to it, the reading is really, really high. If you go in the next room, you can't even pick up the signal. So the Wi-Fi router itself, it's really not that bad. But then you go and you turn your tablet on, you take it off airplane mode. I highly recommend airplane mode to anybody listening. You've got a smartphone, you've got a smart device. Airplane mode is your friend, okay? When you're sleeping, you shouldn't have this phone next to you. Also, blue light filters. This blue light agenda is quite staggering, but it causes damage to your eyes that after researchers claim that after 40 years of exposure to blue light that you could easily go blind. It's called macular degeneration.
Apparently that's why the likes of Bono and all these celebrities wear these red sunglasses that you see them in the whole time, somebody told me. To negate the effects of blue light, because they know about this shit.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. You can buy blue light shielding glasses online for like $20, but all you have to do is be steered towards the truth, and now your children aren't going blind in 20 years. You know, it's just about bringing that truth forward. And also, to quickly go back and answer your question about the links between geoengineering and 5G, when the chemicals are sprayed in the sky and they're superheated with ionospheric heaters at ground level, heat waves are created. High pressure is created to steer storms, and high pressure is created to create heat waves. Those heat waves are used as points on these graphs to claim that the planet is heating. Okay, so if you've got these cell towers everywhere that can essentially use microwaves to heat, right? Once these aerosols are deployed and they're utilizing this 5G infrastructure to heat the air to cause heat waves, the claim will be that the heat waves are getting out of control, that we need more geoengineering, and that they have to spray more to dim the sky even more. And then as you spray more, we get disconnected to the stars and the sun and all that celestial astral energy, and everything shifts. Okay, so there is a very intricate, inextricable link there that not everyone is talking about. And just think for yourself when you're out there. So like I said, if you have one of those readers, or you can pick up one of those readers, you can learn so much. You can see what your smart meter is doing. You can see how powerful your cell phone is, how much microwave radiation it's emitting. I'm actually making cell phone slips that are lined with copper that you can slip your phone into. You don't lose all of your service. You still have bars, but your radiation is completely negated.
Yeah, good for you. How does AI and transhumanism fit into this whole picture?
Wow. So that's a really big question, and it does. And it's very clear once you begin to see it through the right lens. So the AI, which is supposedly being rolled out in China with the social credit system and all of their cameras and dictating who is allowed to even
facial
ride
recognition
public transit.
and such.
It's facial recognition. They want to have a social credit system in place where they're already rolling it out in the schools, where they're managing your heartbeat and your temperature and your emotions and seeing who's a good girl and who's a bad girl. And you'll have a score. And if your score gets low enough, it's like right out of the show Black Mirror, if anybody watches that. And once your score gets too low, you won't be able to access your bank accounts or anything. They just turn you off. So the AI, to actually roll out an AI system of complete control, monitoring everything, everywhere, at all times, this Internet of Things needs to roll out completely, which means a 5G millimeter wave will be pushed around everywhere. Your phone will no longer just be picking up a signal, it'll also be giving off the signal. All right, so your phone will actually now be a small tower. Your dishwasher, all these things, these Internet of Things, your smart TV, the small cell infrastructure in your neighborhood, the street lamps with the small cell infrastructure. Once this monitoring is completely in place by propagating this 1 millimeter wave everywhere, then the complete control grid can begin to be established. And as we know, if we research, where did this technology even come from? The 1 millimeter wave technology came from the U.S. military. They created, you can look this up, the ADS, Active Denial System. The active denial system is the creation of a frequency fence by use of the 1 millimeter wave. So yes, the wave that the 5G is going to use, it will penetrate the skin and it'll be absorbed a couple millimeters into your skin. All right. Well, if you tweak the wave just a little bit, it burns your skin. It's just depending on the exact size and frequency. Okay, how many times it goes a second. The terahertz wave, which we're approaching, is 1 trillion times per second. 1 trillion waves per second, a millimeter in size. All right, just wrap your head around that and think about the potential impacts. So the military, they created the active denial system that basically looks like a Hummer with a cell tower on top, a small cell tower on top of a Hummer, and they can create this fence where the 1 millimeter wave is projected, and if you go into that frequency range, your skin is burned. So it's an invisible fence. So once this 5G, AI, full dominance smart city rollout has occurred, if the powers that be wanted to, they could literally put up these frequency fences and say, no, you've been a bad boy. We saw you spit on the street and jaywalk, and now we're going to not let you leave your home. Or you'll be burned with this 1 millimeter wave that's everywhere anyways. So the AI, to have its, basically what the AI needs is to be completely in control of the monitoring of everything, and then it can progress from there. So the transhumanism, which is really dark and it gets spiritual and it gets kind of weird, and you really have to look at it through the right frame of reference, or it becomes kind of scary. And I'm not here to put you all into a place of fear. I'm actually looking to empower and inspire people with truth. Again, I'll say truth is a high vibration. It may seem like it's cloudy with this dark stuff, but it's not. It's not. Truth is high vibration. It's just the way you embrace it. So the 1 millimeter wave from the 5G, the people like Barry Trower, though he's expert intelligence, I don't even know if I trust him. But there's different researchers out there that are claiming the ability for the 5G to sterilize. Now, there's studies on just even 4G technology and sperm, and the sperm starts swimming in circles and not a straight line when it's around too much cell phone radiation. So, and if you look at the birth rates across the world, or Obamacare, or Obama, when he was in office, he did this thing called Obama Phone, and he made sure that minorities could get phones. Once these people who didn't have smartphones before, they got phones, their birth rates immediately dropped. So there's a lot of pretty obvious research. And if you go to my website, actualactivists.com, or even on my GoFundMe page, gofundme.com/protectionclothing, I've actually got a lot of research in there showing the harmful effects of this non-ionizing radiation, but one of them is sterility. It's a real thing. Okay, so the next generation will be sterilized if they're around too much of these electromagnetic fields, and the next generation won't be able to have kids. Okay, so where does that put us? Well, let's look at other things that are happening at the exact same time. You've got characters like Elon Musk promising a journey to Mars. All right. You've got National Geographic claiming that we're going to take evolution into our own hands and become part cyborg. You've got different media and television and movies pushing this programming of this new evolution, which is getting chips inside of us, getting altered so that we can breathe the air on Mars. The only people that will be able to go to Mars are people that are part robot. All right. So once Elon Musk actually makes it to Mars, which I don't believe any of that crap, by the way. If you saw,
this is assuming that anyone can actually get to Mars, of course, or anywhere other than Earth.
Right. Which which from my heart and my gut and my intuition, I'm not buying it.
No, me neither.
The implications are way too large here. So what the story is that Elon Musk has this private company, SpaceX, and to first show people how cool he was, he shot a Tesla convertible roadster into space with a mannequin in the driver's seat.
Sounds
and
plausible.
He was supposed to he shot the car supposedly to go hit Mars, but he missed. Okay, there's no Van Allen belt, there's no stars, there's no satellites, there's nothing in the imagery of the live stream of this convertible flying through space. And when questioned, Musk says it's so fake, it must be real. All right, it's just twisting the minds of the masses to just believe what they're told.
Where's
right?
Stanley Kubrick when you need him?
No kidding. So there's this quote: you can either take truth as the authority or authority as the truth. It's up to you. And I truly believe it. The truth is right there. But once you ignore your own intuition, okay, intuition is something that is cultivated. You don't just all of a sudden look someone in the eyes and feel how they are in your gut. You know, it's something that you build over your lifetime, and then finally, after a few processes of not trusting your gut and realizing you should have, when something happens and you've got this knot in your stomach, you realize, oh wait, no, maybe I shouldn't do X, Y, Z or what have you. So this fake convertible shot to Mars was just the beginning. Elon Musk will push this accelerated race to Mars, and then now Trump has this Space Force Army for space too, which is all just totally bogus. But basically what is going on is the powers that be want you to be really excited about space. Okay, if we back up and realize that NASA was established by thousands of Nazis escorted over Project Paperclip, the story starts to kind of unravel that maybe the people behind NASA, who actually also created the MK Ultra program, maybe these people aren't looking out for humanity's benefits. Maybe they're actually trying to enslave humanity over generations through this transhumanism agenda. Right. So essentially, if you want to go to Mars, you're going to have to become part robot, because you'll have to have a bionic lung, you'll have to have these upgrades to be, you know, on the game show that'll be all over the TV to go to Mars, okay? So at the end of the day, I'm reminded of the movie Total Recall. I can't help but go right back to Total Recall, not the sequel, not the new one, not the remade version, but Arnold Schwarzenegger, Total Recall from the 90s. And if you watch this movie, what a great flick when I watched it when I was a kid, but Schwarzenegger never went anywhere. All right, he had an interface in his brain where you could put a chip and memories could be implanted. And he realized that this entire expedition, this entire journey to Mars, where he was this hero and all of this stuff went down, that ultimately it never even occurred. It was just a chip being put in his head. And I firmly believe that this exact scenario may be unraveling right before our eyes. What an incredible journey we will have in our lifetime to watch as the timeline is shifted towards this dystopian future, where if we remain silent, our silence is literally our consent to this dystopian, very weird future where the eventuality is that people won't be able to have kids. The headlines will read, transfer your consciousness into a cyborg to save humanity. Live forever to save humanity. Okay? In just a couple decades, they'll have transhuman clones of yourself that are part robotic, and they'll claim that they can transfer your consciousness, ignoring the existence of a soul. They'll claim that they can transfer your consciousness right over into this robot version of yourself, and that you'll be able to essentially keep doing that forever and become part of this hive mentality where everyone ends up eventually in this I mean, as if anybody would really want this, to share memories and to be on this whole hive mentality where everyone is together in this intranet, digital space. It's just the direction that it's heading. So it's up to us to hone in on our spiritual abilities. The thing about the eventual transgression of humanity's evolution, okay? We're at the very beginning of our evolution here, all right? And somehow these forces want to completely hijack us, steer us away from our humanity altogether, convince us that we are soulless, and tell us that transferring our consciousness into a robot, and trust us, nothing could go wrong, is actually a good thing.
Right.
It seems like a science fiction movie to me.
Yeah, well, this seems a very good point to get into some of the spiritual implications of what's going on here, because I know you're a dude that is open to that side of things, and I can have this kind of conversation with you, which I wouldn't be able to have with every kind of researcher into things like geoengineering and 5G and such, as we spoke about off air. So it seems to me that elements of karma, certainly consent, free will, and natural law are all at play here. And there are consequences waiting to be served up for both those perpetrating these crimes and putting harm into the world, which they do not have a right to do under natural law, and for those of us on the receiving end of it if we opt to do nothing about it. So it's all about consent. And so much gets done to us on the basis of tacit, unspoken consent. So it's observed that if we don't voice any kind of objection to something that's being done to us, we've therefore agreed to it. And so the karmic burden is removed from those, putting this harm into the world. So the key to it has to be the removal of consent and making it expressly clear that we do not consent to what's being done to us. That would have a very profound effect in the shifting of the karmic burden. I'm rambling a bit now, but I think all these elements are part of the picture: karma, consent, free will, and all of this. And
you're not rambling. Very, very well put. It's actually 11:11 a.m. where I'm at here in Southern Oregon on the West Coast. So, yeah, you're completely right. And manufacturing of consent has been the objective of the elite for quite some time. And it creates this duality where the truth becomes that much more important. Okay? Like it's like this. We can't be lined up and forced into anything because of the rules of the game where we're playing on Earth. Nobody handed me a handbook. I don't really know the rules, but what I do know is there is some sort of karmic law. There is some sort of game at play where we have to concede. And that's why the goal is to slowly get us excited about technology, to slowly get us excited about the next version of the smart this and that. People are going to be lining up for the next smartphone from Apple, basically no matter what. If it has to involve putting a chip in your hand to have the next coolest thing to integrate with the 5G and to have augmented reality, people are so excited about technology, but it's because they're told to be. It's a manufactured perspective through the media. Free will is everywhere, and it has to be, but it seems that we're being coerced and tricked into giving our free will consent to certain situations, because those doing this understand that we would never ordinarily go for these things if the truth of them were explained to us. So they have to coerce us into it by these sly means in order to gain our approval, right? Well, exactly. That's exactly what they do. And it's honestly, if I was the judge in this tribunal and this intergalactic ruling, I would say that there's some definite cheating going on. This is not fair.
For sure.
It's not fair at all. I mean, if you look at the news, they want you to think that nobody is waking up. All right? They censor the truth. They twist reality. They flood you with propaganda and different disinformation, misinformation to confuse you. But if you have the courage to go out on the street, go to a farmer's market, look someone in the eyes and say, hey, do you know about chemtrails? Or that's just me, for instance. But you bring up something that you think everyone is sleeping. You think you're walking around with a bunch of zombies because that's what you're told. That's what you're told through the media. That's what you're told through the music. That's what you're told through everything. But go out and have a conversation with a normal person. Use your instinct. Use your intuition. Cultivate that intuition. But literally talk to somebody in a coffee shop. Talk to somebody completely out of your normal routine. Don't go on Facebook and go into your group on chemtrails and post a photo of chemtrails and see the responses there, because that's all controlled. There's even the AI is actually getting a pretty firm grip on social media now, where I've got 37,000 followers, and if I post something that they don't want the world to see, the world does not see it, okay? If I I accidentally post something that's propaganda, it goes viral. And then I look at it and I say, wait, why has this gone viral? And then I realize it's photoshopped and it's got some CIA, whatever, okay? Mm-hmm. But if you can see the world through the correct lens, where we're on the precipice of a mass awakening, okay? People are waking up at an amazing, staggering rate. I have been lucky enough to be driving around the Pacific Northwest in the United States recently, and I've been giving my movies out, Frankenskies. I've been just giving them out to people. I'll start a conversation, and you wouldn't believe the kind of people that I'm meeting, people from all sorts of walks of life that are asking very big, important questions, unbelievable questions, questions about the place in which we live, spiritual questions, questions about astronomy, questions about the geoengineering, questioning the vaccines. You know, all these things were not happening just years ago. And no matter how hard they try, we are on our evolutionary timeline as spiritual beings. Okay? There is a natural path that we're on. All right? So as long as we remain course, we win. The powers that be want to completely hijack our course, steer us from spirituality, steer us from truth, and get us to a point where we're sharing memories and we're part robot. I want to start a campaign that's that's human for life. The Human for Life campaign. If people realize the unbelievable, intuitive, and even manifesting power of the human being, we are living in a co-created, we are living in a co-created reality, where it's a consensus reality, where if we're all on one page, then that's what exists. All right? I know it sounds kind of hard to believe, all right? But we are incredibly powerful. Just test yourself. Believe in yourself. Give yourself a couple small tests or what have you. But I'll have things pop in my head, and they'll happen a few minutes later. And I'm at my stage in my evolution. I'm 38 years old, and the past couple years of my life, once I completely opened the door to trusting, to believing, to honoring the fact that the universe has my back, so much has shifted. It's kind of like, basically, you kind of have to not really sign up, but you have to open up your heart and say, hey, I'm here to make a difference.
Absolutely. And we're right at the start of 2019. I feel this is going to be a very interesting year. Lots is going to happen, and whatever else it may be, it's not going to be boring. So we should probably start to wrap up here, but is there anything else you want to add to the discussion? You've dropped some pretty inspiring words there for people to reflect on. Is there anything we've not covered that you want to add here, Matt?
Oh yeah, of course. I could just read you a book right now. But essentially, I want to get back to how we met in person. I think that the digital age and the smartphones and the smart devices and all this stuff, and please, people, if you have a child, know that putting your tablet on airplane mode is going to change their life. Okay, if you're putting a smartphone or a tablet in your kid's lap and keeping them busy for a while, I get it, but they don't need to be radiated all the time. All right, Bluetooth, same thing. They don't need to be radiated all the time. And as we get deeper into this age of the digital world, which is pretty consumerism based and pretty materialistic, if you think about it, it is so much more important now than ever to meet these people one-on-one, to make some eye contact, to shake someone's hand. Just meeting you, Mark, in person, okay, knowing that you're a good guy, just trying to play your part and do something for the future, and tell the world that you do not consent to the potential hijacking of our timeline, to the direction we're trying to be steered in. It made such a difference to me. Now I have this deep connection with you. You know, like I know you as a person because we met in person. All right, so when I host these conferences, and when other people host these conferences, or I have a movie screening, or there's another movie screening for whatever, you know, or you just get out to the farmer's market and meet a farmer, for crying out loud, you know, support local, look someone in the eyes, and actually recognize your humanity. I see so many people walking down the streets with their Bluetooth headphones glued to their screen, like there could be a spaceship landing and nobody would know. So with that said, I really want to encourage people to be empowered and honored to have this flame of truth, okay? If we don't pass this flame forward, it could potentially be lost, all right? And I cannot stress the importance of who we are as the bringers of this light. We're not a minority. We're told we are. All right? We're told we are. That's not the truth. There's so many people waking up that aren't on Facebook, that aren't on Instagram. They're just out there and they're realizing who they are, and what is going on in this world. The people who change the world are the people that believe that they can. All right? And if you can step in to this light and actually honor with integrity the path that we are all on together, we can all forge an amazing future that is not this agenda that these few elitists that are maybe even part robot by now that they want. You know, I'm going to drop a couple websites. There's Terry Lawton out of Ireland. He has a website, climatechangeagenda.com. I think that's really worth watching. Also, if you haven't seen the 2007 movie, The Great Global Warming Swindle, that really plays out. Like, if you still think global warming and climate change is real, you're not getting the whole picture. So please take a look at some of these resources. Please go on YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay? If you realize the importance of us unifying and coming together, millions of people wouldn't watch Frankenstein's my movie but then not subscribe to my channel. You know, it's like we have to come together and realize that we're all brothers and sisters of truth. All right? Please follow me on Facebook. Befriend me on Facebook. Send me an email. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me how you feel about, did this podcast resonate with you? Frankenskies@gmail.com is my email. Frankenskiesthemovie.com is where you can find my movie. Actualactivists.com is my networking hub for all this different truth on all these different aspects, where I ultimately want to turn it into a social networking so we can all come together and not be so censored. And lastly, thank you for you, Mark, and your show, and for people like you, and having the courage to step up, you know, and just speak your truth in the way that you can and honoring it. And I appreciate you.
Well, you're the true activist here, man. You're walking the talk for definite. And before I started this show, there was a certain amount of trepidation at having to wallow in all this dark information about 5G and chemtrails and stuff. But we're at the tail end of the show now, and you've definitely turned around the way I feel about things on this particular day. I feel motivated now. I feel far more inspired than I was earlier. You've reminded me that these are incredible times to be alive, and it's actually an honour to be able to live out our human experiences in such an incredible set of circumstances. And, I'm just very happy to be walking this path alongside the likes of you in the same time frame. We're going through these experiences together, and it's a spiritual thing. Our spirits are growing and evolving from all of this, and not everyone recognises that. Certainly not all speakers that you get in this field of information will tell you that, but you do. So I want to thank you for coming on today, and I hope that people listening have got something out of it the way I certainly have, and I just commend you for all that you do. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mark, and I look forward to the next time we meet.
This is just foregone.
I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up good vibrations. I'm picking up good vibrations.